Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're joining us today, you're probably looking for speed, for efficiency, and for some clarity. So consider this your definitive revision guide, your final formula sheet for two absolutely foundational concepts in computer science: binary search and recursion.
That's exactly our mission. We're not aiming for, a textbook reading here. We're distilling the core logic, the real must-knows, and maybe most importantly, the why behind the massive performance gains these algorithms give you.
Right.
These are the tools that let systems scale efficiently, especially when you're dealing with millions or, even billions of data points.
Exactly. We're cutting through all the noise to focus on the mandatory conditions, the core mechanics, and those huge efficiency benefits. And we're starting right now with binary search. So let's unpack this. If you're prepping for a technical interview or just trying to optimize your code, what is the single non-negotiable prerequisite for using binary search?
The absolute mandatory prerequisite is this. The list, the array, your data set, it must be sorted before binary search can even be applied. If your input isn't in order, whether that's ascending or descending, the very first step in your process before any search happens has to be sorting. Binary search is fundamentally broken if the data is out of order.
And that necessity is what makes it so different from what you might call a sequential search, right? Where you check every value one by one.
Exactly. Sequential search is simple, but it's brute force.
It's ON.
Precisely.
Yeah.
ON, which means if you double the size of the list, you pretty much double the search time. Binary search, on the other hand, is clever. It uses the sorted nature of the data to repeatedly just divide the search space in half based on a comparison with the middle position.
So unlike a sequential search that might take, 50,000 steps to find something in a list of 100,000, binary search is like the ultimate game of guess the number.
It's the ultimate digital binning. When you check that middle element, you're not just finding out if the target is there, you're deciding which half of the entire list you can completely discard. Instantly. If your target is larger than that middle element, you eliminate the whole left half. If it's smaller, you eliminate the right half. That halving, that's the key to its power.
And this is where we have to talk about time complexity, because this explains why anyone would even bother with the hassle of sorting a list first. That efficiency game sounds profound, but let's see how dramatic the actual numbers can be.
It's the difference between linear time and logarithmic time. Linear time, your ON, means the work scales directly with the size of your input. Logarithmic time, O log n, means the work scales with the logarithm of the input size.
Okay, hang on. O log n. Let's break that down. In plain language, why is that so much better?
Right. Good question. Imagine you have a list with, say, 1 billion items. A sequential search, in the worst-case scenario, would need up to 1 billion checks. That could take hours, maybe even days.
1 billion operations.
But because binary search halves the list every single time, that billion-item list only requires about 30 comparison operations. 30.
Wow.
That is the difference between days and microseconds.
30 operations versus 1 billion. That connection between having the search space and that logarithmic curve, that's the key takeaway for efficiency.
And our sources had a great real-world metric for this. They ran a comparison searching for an item that didn't exist. So, a guaranteed worst-case search in a list of 100,000 entries. The simple sequential search took about 0.004 seconds.
4 milliseconds, which, sounds pretty negligible.
It does, but the binary search, it registered 0.00 seconds. It was so fast the system couldn't even clock the microseconds it took.
Too fast to measure.
And this is the so what. If you have a system handling, say, 10 million users, and every query has a 4 millisecond delay, those tiny delays accumulate into massive system bottlenecks. Users get frustrated. Binary search makes the difference between a viable, scalable application and one that just grinds to a halt.
Okay, that definitely makes the cost of having to sort the list first seem worth it, most of the time. But let me just challenge that for a second. If the mandatory first step is sorting, and sorting itself is often complex, let's say ON log n, doesn't that kind of undermine the efficiency we just talked about?
Yeah.
Especially if you only plan to search the list once.
That's a critical point. And you're right. If you only search the list one time and the list is huge, the cost of that initial sort might actually outweigh the benefit of the quick search.
Right.
But in most large-scale applications, think databases, lookup tables, search engines, the list is sorted once and then it's searched millions of times. When you amortize the cost of that one sort across millions of lightning-fast searches, the logarithmic speed of binary search wins every single time. It's an investment in future performance.
That reframing helps a lot. So, okay, let's drill down into the mechanics, the implementation. If we're using the iterative approach, how do we find that magic middle point? This is step one on our revision sheet.
We need the median index, and the formula is simple. Mid-index, first index plus last index 2. The crucial detail here for programming, though, is that you have to use integer division.
And why is integer division mandatory there?
Because array indices have to be whole numbers. You can't have an index 4.5 if your search space runs from index 0 and 9. The sum is 9. Dividing by 2 gives you 4.5. Integer division just naturally truncates that to 4, giving you a valid index every single time. It just works.
Got it. So once we have our begin and end indices, the search happens inside a while loop. What's the standard condition for that loop to keep running?
You need a condition that guarantees the search space is still large enough to split. A really standard one is while end index begin index 1. This condition makes sure the process continues as long as there are more than 2 elements left to check. Once it fails, you know you're down to just the begin and end positions.
Now for the key logic, the part that separates working code from broken code, updating the boundaries. If the element at the middle index, lmid, is smaller than our target k, how do we shift the search window to the right?
Okay, so if the middle value is too small, we know for sure the target isn't at mid or anywhere to its left. So we update the beginning of our search, begin mid plus 1.
Plus 1.
We increment by 1 because we already checked the current mid and we've discarded it.
Perfect. Now for the slightly tricky part. What if lmid is larger than the target k? We need to shift the window to the left. What's the update for the end index?
Right. If the middle value is too large, the target has to be in the left half. So we update the end index, end equals mid. And crucially, notice we do not subtract 1 here. We keep the current mid index as the new end boundary. We're keeping it as a possibility within our shrinking search space.
That distinction, mid plus 1 for the beginning, but just mid for the end, is absolutely vital for getting iterative binary search right.
It is. And when that while loop condition finally fails, the program exits and does a final check on those last 1 or 2 positions, begin and end. If the target isn't in either of those spots, we can confidently say it's not in the list at all.
Fantastic breakdown. Okay, let's pivot from iteration to the concept that often goes hand in hand with this kind of efficient searching, recursion. This is where things can feel, well, a little mind-bending because it's about functions calling themselves.
It sounds abstract, yeah, but it's really just the principle of dividing labor. Recursion is when a function calls an identical copy of itself from within its own body, usually before the first call is even finished.
So it hasn't finished its job, but it's already delegating the next part of its work. It's like systematic outsourcing.
Exactly. You solve a large, complicated problem by breaking it down into smaller, identical subproblems. The original function kind of suspends its work, waits for the copy to return a result from the smaller problem, and that copy might, in turn, outsource an even smaller problem. You get this whole stack of suspended tasks.
And that stack of suspended tasks is exactly why we need to talk about the danger zone. If every function is waiting for another function to finish, how do you stop it from becoming an infinite chain?
You've just hit on the golden rule of recursion. Every single recursive function must have a base condition.
The stop sign.
An absolute stop mechanism. Without it, the function just calls itself indefinitely, creating an ever-growing stack of suspended tasks.
And what happens when that stack gets too large for the computer to handle?
The infamous stack overflow. The computer literally runs out of memory allocated to track all those suspended function calls, and the program crashes. That base condition isn't just a technical detail. It is the safety mechanism that makes recursion practical at all. It's the one return statement that doesn't involve another function call.
Let's use a simple example. Say a function that checks for the value 0 in a list. If it doesn't find 0 at the very first element, it calls itself. How does it simplify the problem for that next call?
Well, in a standard, simple recursion, it would physically slice the list. It would call itself, but pass a smaller, truncated list like L1, which just removes the head element. It creates a slightly smaller subproblem.
And the base condition?
The base condition would be met when the list is completely empty. At that point, the final function returns false, and that false result just propagates all the way back up the chain of waiting functions.
Okay, this brings us to recursive binary search, or RBS. If standard recursion involves physically slicing the list, and we know slicing takes time and memory, how does RBS actually optimize this? It seems like it could undo all the gains we just talked about.
That's the crucial efficiency gain you see in advanced applications. In that simple example, physically slicing a huge list over and over is a really costly operation. RBS avoids that completely.
So how does it define the smaller problem without actually slicing the list?
Instead of passing a new, physically smaller list, the RBS function passes the same list every single time, but it defines the new narrowed search window just by updating and passing the begin and end indices as parameters.
So the list itself never changes.
Never. It's never copied or physically changed. Only the numbers defining the boundaries of the search are updated and passed on. This index-based approach is so much faster and cleaner.
That is the essential insight that takes you from just understanding recursion to implementing it efficiently in a high-performance setting. So what do the base conditions look like in an optimized RBS where we're only using indices?
The base conditions focus on that index relationship. They signal that the search space has collapsed. The recursion has to stop. If, for instance, the begin index becomes greater than the end index, that means you've missed the target. Or, more practically, the recursion stops if begin equals end, or if end begin equals 1. These conditions tell you the search is down to 1 or 2 elements, and the results can propagate back up the chain without any more self-calling.
And if the search range is still large?
If it's still large, meaning the indices haven't collapsed, the function calculates a new mid-index, using that same integer division we talked about, and then it just recursively calls itself, passing the list and the target, but with the new narrowed indices as the boundaries. So something like our binary search, L, K, new begin, end.
So, to wrap up our revision sheet here.
We've covered the essentials. Binary search needs a sorted list and gets its O log n efficiency by constantly having the search space through, careful index manipulation. And recursion absolutely requires that safety mechanism of a base condition, and it solves big problems by systematically outsourcing subtasks.
And mastering both, especially that index-based approach in recursive binary search, provides the significant time savings you need for large-scale high-performance applications. The difference between a sequential search and binary search really is the difference between minutes and microseconds when your data sets get into the millions or billions.
Just remember that relentless focus on efficiency and the absolute necessity of those base conditions.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, walking away from this deep dive? We focused heavily on the incredible speed of binary search, but let's circle back to that challenge we raised earlier. How would that mandatory initial sorting requirement, which could take ON log time, change the overall complexity if your list was unsorted to begin with, and you only plan to search it, say, 10 times? Does that investment still pay off?
Something to mull over as you continue your deep dive into algorithmic efficiency.
Keep learning.